If you've ever walked into a room full of people and still felt completely invisible, or wondered why making friends seems effortless for everyone else, but confusing and exhausting for you, then stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why that happens, and more importantly, why it might not be a flaw at all. There's a quiet shift happening in the world that not many people talk about. Over the past few decades, more and more people have started to admit something that used to feel almost unthinkable. They don't have close friends. Not a few less than they'd like, but none. And if that hits close to home, you're not alone in that experience, even if it feels like you are. I remember a time when this realization hit me hard. It was my first year in a completely new environment, surrounded by people who seemed to connect instantly. Groups formed within days, inside jokes developed overnight, and conversations flowed like everyone had known each other for years. Meanwhile, I found myself sitting alone more often than I expected, watching all of it happen from the outside. It wasn't just loneliness, it was confusion. That persistent question looping in my mind, what am I doing wrong? That question stayed with me until I came across research that reframed everything I thought I knew about connection, personality, and what it really means to struggle socially. What I discovered didn't just explain the experience, it completely changed how I saw it. The first thing you need to understand is this. You probably have a very low tolerance for fake interactions. And that might sound simple, but it shapes everything. Think about how often people say things they don't really mean. We should hang out sometime. Let's definitely catch up soon. You hear it, you respond politely, maybe even smile, but there's a part of you that already knows nothing will come of it. Not because you're cynical, but because you can feel the lack of sincerity behind it. Or when someone asks how you're doing, but their attention is somewhere else entirely, scrolling, distracted, half listening. You notice that, not just vaguely, you feel it immediately. And instead of calling it out, you adjust. You give the short answer. You keep it surface level. You move on. It's not that you're angry about it. It's more like a quiet exhaustion, like you're participating in a social script that everyone else seems comfortable with. But you can't ignore how artificial it feels. You see the gap between what people say and what they mean, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That sensitivity isn't random. It's often tied to higher emotional awareness. You're picking up on tone, body language, inconsistencies, things that many people either miss or choose to ignore. And while that awareness can make social situations feel draining, it also means you're tuned into something deeper than surface level interaction, which leads directly into the second point. You don't actually dislike people. You crave something more real than what you're usually offered. There's a difference between being alone and feeling alone. You can be surrounded by people, included in conversations, part of group chats, and still feel like no one truly sees you. Like no one is actually reaching out to understand you on a deeper level. You don't need dozens of friends. You're not chasing popularity or constant attention. What you're looking for is much simpler, but also much rarer. Genuine connection. A conversation where you can say something meaningful and the other person doesn't just wait for their turn to speak. They actually listen. They respond in a way that shows they understood that they care. There are people who have described this kind of loneliness in a way that's hard to ignore. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just honest. The kind of loneliness that isn't about being physically alone, but about not having anyone who truly connects with you. That's not weakness. That's awareness of what meaningful connection actually feels like. Then comes the third pattern, and this one can be exhausting. You overthink everything. A simple message becomes something you analyze from every angle. You type it out, reread it, question how it might sound, delete it, rewrite it, and finally send it. Then the waiting starts. You check if it's been seen. It has. No reply. And suddenly your mind fills in the gaps. Did I say something wrong? Did I come off weird? Are they ignoring me on purpose? Even when there are 100 possible explanations, your brain gravitates toward the one that puts you at fault. The same thing happens in real life. Someone doesn't greet you, you replay the moment for hours. A conversation feels slightly off, you analyze every word afterward. It's like your mind is constantly running simulations, trying to predict outcomes, trying to prevent something from going wrong again. There's actually a psychological pattern behind this. When you've had experiences where connection didn't go the way you hoped, your brain starts preparing for that outcome in advance. It's not trying to sabotage you, it's trying to protect you. But in doing so, it creates a loop where you expect things to go wrong before they even begin. Over time, that leads into the fourth pattern. You start assuming that people won't understand you. Not because you haven't tried, but because you have. You've reached out first, you've made the effort, you've initiated conversations, made plans, tried to build something, and sometimes the response you got made it clear you weren't as important to them as they were to you. Sometimes it's subtle. You're always the one texting first, always the one suggesting plans. And the moment you stop, everything goes silent. Other times it's more direct. Someone tells you they already have enough friends, or they agree to hang out but never follow through unless you keep pushing. After enough of those experiences, you start to adapt. You stop expecting. You hold back. You convince yourself it's better not to open up, because opening up hasn't led to anything lasting. But here's the part that often gets overlooked. That conclusion isn't proof that you're hard to understand. It's evidence that you haven't found people who are willing to understand you yet. There's a difference, and it matters more than you think, which connects to the fifth trait. You're highly independent. You can spend time alone without feeling like something is missing. You don't need constant interaction to feel validated. You don't need to prove you're having a good time by showing it to others. There's a level of self-sufficiency there that a lot of people struggle to reach. In a world where many people feel uncomfortable being alone, you've learned how to exist in that space without it feeling empty. That's not isolation, it's stability. It means your sense of self isn't entirely dependent on external interaction. But independence doesn't cancel out the desire for connection. It just means you're selective about it. Experiences like that leave a mark. They make you more cautious, not closed off, but more aware of how easily things can shift. That awareness influences how you approach new connections. You don't jump in quickly. You observe. You take your time. At the same time, social interaction itself can feel draining, not because you dislike it, but because of how much energy it requires. You're processing more, thinking more, analyzing more, and that takes effort. There's also something important to understand here. Building real friendships takes time. A lot more time than people expect. Casual connection doesn't instantly turn into closeness. It develops gradually, through repeated interaction, shared experiences, consistency. The problem is that awareness can turn inward too strongly. Instead of just noticing, you start judging yourself. You hold yourself to a standard that's almost impossible to meet consistently. And finally, there's something that often goes unnoticed, but might be the most defining part of all. You have a rich inner world. There's a depth to your thoughts that doesn't always get expressed outwardly. You have ideas, reflections, emotions that you process internally. You might have music that feels personal in a way you can't fully explain. Thoughts you write down but don't share. There was a time when I thought the solution was to change, to become more outgoing, more casual, more like the people who seem to connect easily. But the more I understood how these patterns work, the more I realized the goal isn't to become someone else. It's to find people who meet you where you already are. Because the truth is, you don't need a large circle. You don't need constant interaction. What matters is the quality of the connection, not the quantity. And when that kind of connection exists, even in a small number, it changes everything.